Wir wollen nun nicht länger zagen und uns mit Fleisch und Blut, weil wir in Gottes Hut so fürchtern, wie Bischöfe befragen. Ich denke dran, wie Jesus nicht gefüllt das tausendfache Leiden. Er sah es an seine Quelle ewige Freuden. Und dir, mein Christ, wird deine Angst und Qual, deine Bete, Kreuz und Pein, Jesu willen Heil und Sucker sein. Vertraue Gottes Huld und merke noch, was nötig ist. Geduld.
das Brausen und in rauen Winden macht das mir volle Ehren finden, macht das mir volle Ehren finden, das Brausen und in rauen Winden macht das mir volle Ehren finden. So spricht der gottgelassene Geist, wenn des Heilands Bruders dient und Gottes Treue gläubig preist.
Ich weiß gewiss, dass ich unfehlbarselig bin, wenn meine Not und mein Bekümnis von dir so weit geendigt werden. Wie du wohl weißt, dass meinem Geist seit Geist wird stehen. Das
afternoon. I am obviously not Dan Malamed. My name is Dana Marsh. I'm Chair of Historical Performance here at IU, and I'm occasionally seen in Washington, D.C. in my role as Artistic Director of the Washington Bach Cantata. Bach's cantata, Ich hab in Gottes Herz und Sinn, was first performed on Sunday, January 28, 1725, at the Thomaskirche in Leipzig. It is one of 52 surviving works in the chorale cantata genre, of which the majority were composed during Bach's second cycle year in Leipzig. Today's cantata is the 38th example of the type, and having now just heard a performance, we can tell straight away that Bach was no stranger to the genre. I'm just going to step up here, get away from the feedback. The chorale melody at the center of this work was popularly known as Was mein Gott will, das geschehe allzeit. Bach variously used this tune in other cantatas as well, but probably most famously in the Matthew Passion. It also forms the basis and title of Cantata 111, which very curiously was the piece that Bach had just performed in Leipzig the previous weekend on January 21st, 1725. The tune Was mein Gott will originated as a secular chanson from arguably the most important composer of that repertory of the early 16th century, Claudin de Sermizy. The melody first emerged in a publication called 34 Chansons, printed in 1528 by Pierre Attignan, some 200 years before Bach would use it in today's cantata. Of course, it wasn't particularly unusual for a chorale to derive from secular material. Luther famously felt it an exemplary way to connect with congregations. Much of the purpose around Bach's emphasis on the chorale tradition in his second cycle coincided with various observances that had begun less than a decade earlier at the 200th anniversary of the Lutheran Reformation. Many such anniversaries of first publications of chorales followed. In the case of today's tune, its first life was joined with the text, Il me suffit de tous mes maux, a story of unrequited love, where the protagonist gives up on the object of his love, having exhausted every avenue of endearment. The tune was first adapted as a Lutheran chorale almost half a century later in 1572. Liturgically, today's cantata was composed for the Sunday called Septuagesime, which signified 70 days before the end of the Easter festival, which came on the Saturday following Easter Sunday. It was also the 9th Sunday before Easter, or what was sometimes in the minds of the laity thought of as a sort of pre-Lent, beginning on Septuagesime and ending on Shrove Tuesday. Bach composed 3 cantatas that survive for that same day in the ecclesiastical calendar. This is his last. But unlike the previous 2 works composed for the same occasion, there are no direct references in the chorale text or in the anonymous libretto to the lectionary readings. The chorale text heard in today's cantata was composed in 1647 by Paul Gerhardt, a renowned German minister and hymnodist. This is the only example of that author's hymnody to be found in Bach's output. Gerhardt's hymn sprawls out over 12 stanzas, and Bach's musical design variously accommodates these across an imposing 9 movements. Bach uses 3 of Gerhardt's stanzas verbatim, the very first movement and the very last movement, and movement 4 that has the alto solo with oboes obbligato, And he deploys another 2 complete readings of stanzas in movements that otherwise use interpolated commentary from the anonymous librettist. So turning first to the opening movement, while I remarked earlier that Cantata 92 has the same chorale melody as Cantata 111, which Bach had performed the previous week, while the 2 works awaken contrasting affects, there are also striking similarities in formal design of the opening movements. Both are scored for 2 oboes, oboes d'amore in today's work, with independent strings and chorus. Both movements are 136 bars in length. Even the proportional use of that musical space divides equally between ritornelli and chorale entrances. However, this is where the similarities end, as the content and affect come in contrast. Whereas the opening movement of 111 is in a strongly assertive voice, the opening movement we heard today is in a more deeply contemplative voice. The 6/8 meter imbues the work with a graceful lilt, giving credibility to some musical commentators who have labeled the movement as a pastoral gigue. Following more closely the chorale fantasia formal template, however, the motivic material set off by the instruments does not anywhere derive from the chorale melody. The only such citation comes in the very recognizable long notes of the soprano line. Even the accompanying alto, tenor, bass voices in the chorus share the instrumental themes only, with the chorale tune, again, nowhere to be found. Another feature of this movement that is shared elsewhere in the larger work are instances where Bach sets us up to expect certain kinds of cadences, but ends up leading us in a very different direction harmonically. The second movement presents us with a remarkable recitative by any standard. Similar to several other chorale cantata genre examples, there is a rotation between a calm, reverent recitation of the chorale tune and text, interrupted by prose giving direct and immediate interpretive commentary. The first continuo figurations derive directly from the opening phrase of the chorale. In the freer commentary, Bach expends a good deal of energy to create musical passages that represent as visibly and dramatically as possible the implications of the literary imagery, or the predominating feelings that surface in the poetry. Indeed, in the first such example, where the commentary cites Isaiah, saying that even the most powerful features of nature will crumble before the faithful believer would falter under God's protection, the basso continuo line incorporates lightning-quick passages in 30-second notes of a sort heard only in places like the tearing asunder of the veil of the temple at Christ's death in both the St. John and St. Matthew Passions. Later in the same movement, we also hear an ostinato in the bass line of a sort and shape that is also atypical, but virtually identical to the bass line of the opening movement of the St. John Passion. But what also makes this movement exceptional is that by the final section, the rotation of both chorale recitation and free commentary becomes unusually compressed and dense. Normally, one expects a full statement of a chorale phrase and then the corresponding commentary for the sake of symmetry. This pace of rotation comes at the half phrase or even a smaller fragment of the tune, creating a sense of urgency that has attracted remarks from several musical commentators. One such commentary characterized this movement as an audacious experiment on Bach's part, where there is, quote, a danger of the listener being overwhelmed. I'd like to offer a slightly different explanation. After the Reformations, whenever a new Bible was printed, say if it was Lutheran or maybe in the Swiss Reformation in Geneva or Zurich or just bordering France in Strasbourg, there always came with it on the margins commentary that would speak to specific biblical verses. So for example, you could be reading along and suddenly there's all this wording on the side in the margin that the reader was expected to consult because it told you how to interpret the text. Not surprisingly, these marginalia got bigger and bigger and bigger as the Reformation had gone on, to the extent that one might actually wonder at some point what was the more important text. But if you take a look at this text, if you look at the text of the Recitative and you look down towards the bottom of it and you go between the bolded words and the plain face, it gets very, very dense. So you don't even finish a phrase and Bach gets right into the next bit of interpretation. I would submit that this is the way any Lutheran read their texts and got commentary on it, and Bach is just giving us it's like painting a picture of someone painting a picture. He's giving us the setting of the reader themselves as well. So, where in this recitative, the emphasis has been on the hand of God, always being available to the faithful believer in the face of the greatest severity that nature can throw at us. The third movement depicts precisely what happens when that hand is not there to help. And this virtuosic tenor aria seems in musical terms to depict the greatest fears expressed in the previous recitative movement. The string writing divides the constituent parts, the first violin line, a second violin and viola pairing, and the basso continuo line. If you were to subtract the first violin line and listen only to the second violin-viola pair on the one hand and the basso continuo line on the other, the lasting impression would be that of a highly disjointed ostinato, with each line operating in what sounds like fits and starts. Even when adding the first violin line with a melody to the rest, even this barely glues the whole texture together, as the feeling created is intentionally one of instability and fragility in the face of overwhelming power. In pictorial terms, Bach seems to be creating a raging sea, an image to which Gerhard, the hymnodist, and the anonymous librettist variously return to over the course of the whole cantata, even if in this case there is no direct literary reference. In contrast, the fourth movement, Chorale, gives us a full stanza of Gerhard's text verbatim in the alto voice, against a backdrop of obbligato oboes d'amore and basso continuo. The highly refined counterpoint is reminiscent of an organ chorale prelude, consisting of a sort of three-part invention that creates the formal structure on which the alto voice declaims the hymn verse in longer note values. The following movement, the tenor recitative, comes in a form to which we're a little more accustomed. Here the librettists offer hope that all of the fear and anxiety coming out in previous movements will be transformed through faith, and above all, as exhorted in the final phrases, through the German word Geduld, which is repeated, to say that patience will bring one to the right end. And as the librettist also puts it, it is the disquiet of cross-bearing that produces fruit in Christians. The exciting and rather frenetic bass continuo aria opens with a fast-paced and perpetually moving continuo ritornello, then taken up by the vocalist, now and again moving in direct unison or rhythmic parallel. One important point to mention here is that while the music depicts the literary raging, the overarching textual emphases and purpose don't actually rest on characterizing the storming or blustering, but are directed towards the ways that such challenges again become this fruit of progress for the faithful Christian. Although the seventh movement is labeled recitative, we are greeted at the outset with a four-voice recitation of the first phrase of the chorale. An especially endearing feature of this is Bach's use of imitation in the consequent phrases of the chorale melody, implying contrapuntal treatment, even though it's very short-lived. This style of delivery contrasts with the much more densely packed text in the second movement recitative. Again, there are sober statements of the chorale followed by interpretive gloss, this time from each of the four solo vocalists, from lowest to highest voices. This particular deployment of musical forces is relatively rare, one found perhaps fewer than a dozen times in Bach's output, although notable examples can be found in the Matthew Passion, Easter Oratorio, and certain of the cantatas. The concluding recitative commentary coming from the soprano prefigures the following aria, introducing a new song, referring to it as a song with muted strings. Not muted strings in the sense we would expect today, but muted through the pizzicato articulation that seems to offer a peaceful respite from the previous intensity. This beautiful aria offers an acceptance of joy as the reward of faith well practiced. Likewise, all of this predictably moves toward the acceptance of death, evinced in the final words, Amen, Vater, nimm mich an. The final chorale gives us a unique harmonization of that particular chorale from Bach with slightly extended phrase endings. And while on the one hand, this piece as a whole has really been seen as a contemplative work, as you can see, Bach throws plenty of compositional devices at us that give any amount of drama. There's a great amount of it. I would say that in contrast to Cantata 111, which again, remembering that used the same chorale tune the previous week, that while on the one hand the narrative sort of confronts the theological issues directly, confronts the challenges that are there, this focuses more on the faith that makes it possible for all of these different elements, in effect, to make the believer the hub in the middle of which all of this drama revolves. And so that's a little bit sort of how I think it's handled, particularly in this piece. It's really, what a magnificent cantata, and what a beautiful performance we've had today, and I'm looking forward already to hearing the next one. Thank you very much.
So nicht gleicht, bis an der Tage letzten Rest sich hier auf diesen Felsen gründen, halt ich den Stand und lasse mich im felsenfesten Glauben finden, weiß
Wir wollen nun nicht länger zagen und uns mit Fleisch und Blut, weil wir in Gottes Hut so furchtsam wie Bischöfe fragen. Ich denke dran, wie Jesus nicht gefühlt das tausendfache Leiden. Er sah es an seine Quelle ewige Freuden. Und dir, mein Christ, wird deine Angst und Qual, deine Bete, Kreuz und Pein, Jesu willen Heil und Zucker sein. Vertraue Gottes Huld und merke noch, was nötig ist. Geduld, Geduld.
Von den Heiland Bruders ihn und Gottes Treue gläubig preist. Nimm mich und mache es mit mir. Bis an mein
Ich weiß gewiss, dass ich unfehlbarselig bin, wenn meine Not und mein Bekümmern